Hi guys, this is Anderson from New Wave Traditional Heavy Metal Full Albums, and we have one more interview for you. And this time we are talking with Evgeny and Jeff from Adamantis. Hi guys, how are you?
Hey,
Hello, Anderson.
hello.
We will talk a lot about the present, but for context to the viewers, we need to talk about the past first. When I got to know Adamantis, you had a different lineup, and you released an EP in 2018 called Thundermark. I think I posted on the channel. What happened uh, with all the lineup changes, and who is in the band right now?
So, for the story behind that, Ashley and I, our previous singer, are long-term friends. We've known each other for about 10 years. And when I first moved back to the area we're in now, Boston, we had talked about starting a band and are trying to. And when we put out that ad and started looking for people, we ran into Evgeny and Javier, our other guitarists, who were both looking for sort of the same thing, and we kind of merged the groups. But we spent that year or so playing shows, and we recorded Thundermark. That we kind of had different levels of expectations and desires for what we wanted to do with the band. And Ashley moved on. She has another project that she's been working on, along with Liz, our former bassist. I still talk to them fairly regularly. We're still friends, but that after the Thundermark release, we kind of parted ways, and then we went to our songwriting phase. And so along that, we added Cody Pelchat, who's our bassist. And then finally, a little bit later than that, Jeff Stark joined. So it was definitely a switch. I mean, we switched from a female lead vocal to a male lead vocal. It's probably the biggest thing in it.
This was something that you intended to do, or just happened?
It just happened more than anything. Like you said, different desires, different expectations, and it was just kind of an amicable split, and people went their own ways. And we decided to keep going forward with Adventists.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add to that legacy. So you're right that we are now two different, very different sounds in a way. We still keep the same cores, the same kind of core values, but we sound very different. But I have to say that kind of first era of Adamantis was actually pivotal for us to kind of become something of a presence in the local scene, right? So thanks to Ashley and her connections and how she was pushing for essentially focusing on the live performances all the time. We ended up playing the whole year with her, like almost every weekend. Like it was, that's a little bit exaggerating, but we played many shows.
Yes, at least once or twice a month, pretty much the entire year, which for a metal band, this kind of style of music in this area is pretty...
So I'm personally very grateful for that part, because it really laid the foundation for us to, like, locally, right? We gained a good number of supporters, loyal fans who are now actually the first ones in listening to our album. Feedback is being great. So it's thanks to Ashley, we really essentially sent roots, I would say, into the ground. But then we needed something. We needed something else to make those roots to actually really dig deeper and make the tree grow. And Ashley thought that she wanted to do something completely different, and we decided to continue growing this tree. And now we are seeding, or we're already harvesting the first fruits, which is quite quite amazing. But I'm really grateful for what she did for the band.
Absolutely.
So after all this happened, and even before, we have a band from Brighton, near Boston, USA, playing what is commonly called European power metal. So how do you explain that?
The first explanation is that the band is mixed, right? We have two European members. Me, myself, I grew up in Spain, right? So this was my milk, this is what I was drinking. I was a child, like Blind Guardian and all the German stuff, right? So that's the stuff I always wanted to play, and that's the stuff I used to play when I was in Spain in many bands. And all my friends are kind of from the same community. That was the thing. So and then Javier, my buddy, the other kind of European in the band, he also was growing up in Spain in the 90s, right in Madrid, where power metal, the German power metal especially, was like the thing to listen to. So it kind of, this style comes very natural to us. We essentially know the in and outs of it, and we love it. We cannot avoid, even if we have different musical tastes, we cannot avoid going back to some of these like albums like Nightfall in Middle Earth and still feel that that's kind of some sort of a pinnacle in music. So for us, me and Javier, was very natural to play this music. But what was very interesting is that Jeff put an ad in Craigslist, essentially looking for musicians for exactly the same kind of bands, and they're, so for us it was a surprise that Jeff was looking for that. But then maybe Jeff can say a little bit on that.
Yeah, so I grew up about 2 hours from where we are now in Connecticut, and there was not that case. I discovered the like power metal, and that's the Blind Guardian right behind Evgeny there. Through the internet. I remember downloading, at the advice of a friend, Mirror Mirror and Lord of the Rings off Blind Guardian's old mp3.com site. And I'd grown up listening to heavy metal. I had an older brother who got me into Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and Dio and all the classics of when I was younger, and I'd always listened to that. But then I heard Blind Guardian, and it's just completely blown away. The speed, the aggression, all the different working parts and melodies that were going on. And I just dove headlong into power metal. Next thing I was listening to was Gamma Ray and then Hammerfall. And I was just tracking this all down online. And then when I wanted to get physical copies, I took a train to New York. It took about a 2-hour train ride from my old home growing up just to go buy a copy of Nightfall in Middle Earth at Tower Records because there's absolutely no other way to get it without going to these big CD stores and rooting around the import bins, because it was like early 2000s, and while that was booming in Europe and all these great albums came out then, like, no one was pressing or importing them in America. So I had to go dig up Stradivarius, stuff like that a lot. And right. I had started playing guitar as a teenager around the same time I got into music. So that was what I wanted. That was like the first collision of those two things. So that was always, when I was learning to play guitar, something I was trying to learn from and adapt. So in an entirely different way than Javi and Evgeny did, I grew up with the music sort of in isolation almost. I was the one around my friends who was listening to it, and then I would try to get them into it.
Yeah, I think my personal story is more like Evgeny, because I was listening to heavy metal early 2000 in Brazil, and there power metal was like it was heavy metal at the time. So if you're listening to heavy metal at early 2000s in Brazil, you're listening to power metal. I like this style so much, and I like your album as well. And Flung Realm, it's your new album. It's a beautiful length, and it comes 2 years after the Thundermark EP. Aside from the lineup changes, how much did you change as a band?
I think we grew a lot. I think, like Evgeny sort of talked about before, playing a lot together helped us immensely. It really figured out what we liked and what we worked, and also how we worked together. And once we had this solid basis of having done a few songs together and played them a bunch, we knew how to play off each other and how to work together. And we sort of developed our style and routine of songwriting. And some of these songs on Flung Realm started in that period, even when Thundermark was in existence. Misbegotten Dream, the second single, is actually as old, if not even older than Thundermark. And the last song, Voron, is pretty close to that too. I looked when I sent Evgeny the first ideas for Misbegotten Dream. It was something like 2017 at 11 o'clock at night. And Voron, I remember he wrote the lyrics while he was on holiday in Spain and emailed them to the band right after Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. I think we grew up tremendously knowing each other, and you're right. We are playing a European power metal, but we are also trying to find something of our own style, right? It's an evolving process, as you know. Not it's not something that is kind of immediately given. So a big part of our work this year has been also trying to find what is Adamantis about, right? Kind of a quest for ourselves in a way, and I think this album is also part of that, when we are essentially thinking about ourselves as well. That's why it's so diverse, I would say. If you probably have read some of the comments online, many people remark that it's kind of an album that has a little bit for everyone, and it's part of our own kind of search, if you wish, right? And so that was part of our growth. We are kind of thinking more about ourselves and what is our sound, how we want to focus it, and so every song has a lot of its own identity. Not only because it was written maybe far away in time, but also because it got a lot of time for us in essentially it got time to mature. But then we also have the vocalists who joined very much almost to record the album, because we were without vocalists for a while, and we had some kind of experience with someone who wanted to work with us, but then it didn't really work out. So we were already tracking. I tracked drums. We already were tracking guitars. We still had no vocalist. So we didn't even envision how the vocals would sound before we actually got this guy who we knew was great, but we didn't even know how it would sound. So what he did there, that's something we didn't even have any influence on. So that is another interesting aspect of this album, right? He really composed almost his own melodies there without much interaction with us. He really put his personality into the vocals and some of the lyrics. So that came out actually very spontaneously, very, if you wish, last minute in a way. But I think it came out great. So as you see, many things have happened, evolution, but also some spontaneity, some kind of last time, if you wish, notes happened. So.
Was very different than making Thundermark, where when we recorded Thundermark, we had played those songs dozens of times live and 5 times as many times in the practice space with ourselves, because we knew exactly what those were all about. We knew what happened. We wrote some of these songs, or changed tremendously from when we wrote them, and then Jeff came in, like Evgeny said, and added his own touch. Like Fire and Brimstone was written maybe a month before Evgeny went and tracked drums for it. It was one of the first things that Jeff wrote his vocals over.
Fire and Brimstone is actually my favorite song of the album so far. I have featured it on my radio show.
Thank you.
But what immediately caught my attention when I listened to Flung Realm for the first time was how much it sounded like early 90s or mid 90s power metal, like the same sound that those bands had at their time. How did you get to this sound?
I think it was between the conscious effort of just our style of writing, and we knew that we kind of wanted to capture this sound that we enjoyed in the stylistic, but we also reached out through Evgeny's drum teacher, Tom Stausch, who was formerly of Blind Guardian, to our engineer and producer, Christian Moose, who was very familiar with that sound. He's done dozens of records and of all types of music, but he came through that same scene, and he was ground zero for it. So he knew what almost immediately when we told him the feeling we were going for, and he heard the tracks, how he wanted to capture that same thing, and he did phenomenally. It was almost instant that we were like, oh, this sounds like what we want it to sound like. This really hits all the beats that we were going for in terms of the sound of the guitars, the drums, everything.
Right. But well, I personally wanted to have an album that would sound as 90s as possible, and in a way, this is maybe as a way to pay homage to that very important period in my life. I was the other day remembering when I was watching The Lord of the Rings, when it came right on the screen, 2001 was it, right? The Fellowship of the Ring. and I was like a teenager, right? And all the time, the 2001 era, late 90s, early 2000s, something that I cherish very much, something that really impacted me in many important ways in my life. And so and so we were kind of paying, I was paying kind of a little homage to that in this album. And I also felt that, you know, there are many bands out there who are playing power metal, and power metal has evolved in many directions. And but few bands that I would say I feel like really are distilling that yet kind of primitive power metal sound, the one that kind of you know, as you say, early 90s, late 90s, that particular period in time. So it was an interesting experiment. Can we actually recreate that sound from the production? And that's why we asked Moshus, who, as Jeff said, is a friend of Tomen, and Moshus has been essentially working on this all the way through. He was the first mixing engineer of the first Blind Guardians, I think, world tour. Moshus was behind the kit, and then sent the set of mixing console. And I said, well, this is too busy, went to do something else. So he really knew what we wanted, and it was very interesting to see whether he could get that sound, and that's the result. I think it was. I think we succeeded in that, and you are absolutely on point there. So whether people will like it or not, but we loved it. that's for sure.
That was the thing that I think we didn't waver on. We were on it. We were like, from early on, despite everything that had changed, and we were like, we're gonna make this album that sounds like this '90s stuff that we liked.
Right.
I think we have discussed this before about the Evgeny being a student of Tom and the Omen from Blind Guardian, and I think when you're talking about power metal drummers, he and maybe Ingo from Halloween, they are the two guys that you think about. How did you get to work with him? How did you get to study with him? And do you think this is also a key component of the Adamantis sound?
Well, to the second question, I would hope so. Drummer's mother. And one of the things about Tomen, I would say, as you point out, is that he did matter for Blind Guardian's sound. Like I think it's very hard to deny that Blind Guardian would not be where they are if Tomen wouldn't be hitting as hard and as inventive and musical at the same time as he was hitting, especially after the third album on. It's the combination of strength, power, stamina, but also musicality that makes the Blind Guardian first album stand out above everything else that was actually being done in the genre, and probably has been done ever since. My favorite band ever. So, Tomen. Well, it's actually a fun story. Tomen used to live in Spain for a while. He actually had a wife in Spain, which actually turns out, this is a story, I think it's the first time I'm making this public. His former wife was a friend of my friend. And so they essentially met at a Blind Guardian show, and essentially Tomen started to date her. And once I think my friends met with her at a party in Madrid 2001, like it was New Year's Eve, and I met Tomen there. And I started to talk to him, and we kind of were chatting, and I remember telling him how much I admire his work, whatnot. And then as soon as time evolved, we kind of kept some sort of connection loosely. Then Facebook was more of a connection. And it's not that we've been friends, of course, nothing like that, but we were connected. And then Tomen announced that he would start giving lessons. And I said, hey, are you going to give online lessons? Because I'm here in the United States, you are like in Germany. And he kind of said that was kind of the first one to ask for that. So he prepared the studio for online lessons and stuff. And I think I was his first online student ever. And since then, that's been like started like last year, I think in August. And wow, man, it's been a huge pleasure talking to him, working with him, learning as much as I can. So that's how it is, right? I was just texting to him yesterday, asking him for his new address, to send him the CD. We kind of talk about his life. Lena knows him. Lena recognizes his bands. Like, this is Tomen's band when she listens to Blind Guardian in the car, my 4-year-old daughter. So it became kind of part of a very warm, great relationship with him. I really appreciate that. The guy is just amazing personally as well. So
it's been a trip for me too, even on this outside. When we were recording guitars for Flung Realm, Evgeny would usually have his drum lesson right before then, and we tracked drums in that very basement that he is in. So I would come down, and sometimes Tolman would still be talking to him, and it's just like, oh wow, I'm just gonna show up here to record guitars, and my drummer's hanging out talking after his lesson with the guy who played on some of my favorite albums ever. This is kind of surreal.
Right. So it really opened us several doors. I think it opened us several doors. It also opened me to be able to collaborate with people like Elisa Martin and Tino from Reveal in my kind of own kind of cover world. And through that, we actually managed to get Elisa onto the album. So really, Tommen was, I think, indirectly was very, very important for us to kind of give us a little bit of an extra push. He also put me in contact with Moshos, right? So it really helped. Even he doesn't know it, but it really helped us put us a little bit at high level.
It's also funny or appropriate that you mentioned Ingo. The first song we ever played together when we were this was pre Adamantis being a band, just us jamming in the practice space, was Eagle Fly Free.
This is our like power metal classics.
Yeah, exactly.
I read some reviews of Flung Realm, and they were all positive. Even the ones that had like some criticism, it was like constructive criticism. How happy are you with the reaction of the album?
I'm very happy. I think with the two singles that went up on your channel, especially when we were reading the comments and we saw how people were responding there. We were like, all right, the people we thought would enjoy this are enjoying this, and we feel like we captured what we set out to do. So that makes us happy, definitely. And it's been fun reading the reviews and seeing people pick different songs. Because again, it's a pretty wide spectrum of some very power metal songs and some very not traditionally power metal songs, and to see that people are not just like, why is this song here? It's not power metal, or why is this power metal song here on this? And and to see people just totally accept that and just pick their favorite is really nice.
Yeah. I don't know. I only have to say, I don't know if Google Translate is really good at this, but the fact that guy said that something reminded him of something, and the tattoos glowing in lust.
Yeah, the Danish
tattoos glowing in lust. That's the kind of stuff I live for. That's the kind of review I live for.
To make the braided beard dance. That was great.
That guy who wrote that for Metalized and gave us 9 out of 10. I was like, it's over the top. It's super exaggerated, but whatever. I take it. This is the kind of stuff that I love. So I was very happy about that over the top thing. And then of course the other reviews are constructive, and so we probably need to collect a big kind of sample of those. There are many more reviews coming. We hear from several people who are reviewing them, just not on time before the release. We got some reviews coming from in La Heavy in Spain, also in Spark magazine in the Czech Republic, in addition to these kind of more online outlets. So I would say after all, we'll be able to sit down in January or whatnot, look at everything, and maybe use that as a kind of a estimation what people think about our work. And that will be a very interesting experiment. So far, I think also the sample size is not as big. I'm speaking as a scientist here. So we'll wait, see how the things evolve. But more reviews are to come. That's for sure.
One thing that Jeff talked about is that people are commenting about different songs, and this is something that I noticed because, like I said, Fire and Brimstone is my favorite song, but most of the people were talking about the 2 last songs, Voron and The Siege of Arcana. They are more like on the epic side. So which songs do you think are going to be like which ones are your favorite, and which one do you think are going to appeal more with the public?
I really like Voron a lot as well. We're also big, especially Evgeny and I are big fans of like the epic doom and just epic heavy metal in general. So we try to work that in when we can, and we feel it's kind of a natural fit. And Voron, like I said before, is kind of an older song, but it evolved very much from a sketch of an idea that Javier brought, and we all kind of chimed in and contributed and built around it over the course of time, and it turned into this thing, and we added the choirs when we were in there with Jeff's vocals, and I'm really happy with how that turned out. I like Caesar Arcona a lot too. That one, it's just very huge, very singable. We got to do a little bit of a nod to Bathory, who Evgeny and I also love. You wouldn't think guys playing in a power metal band would go that angle, but we saw the opportunity, and that's when he started. He wrote the actual vocal melody for. He sent it another. We're very big on apparently sending each other ideas at like midnight, and he sent me the recording, and then we started to build around that, and then that one together. So I think those two I like those two a lot. It's been a lot of people like Imagination, which is kind of a song we thought people would almost be a little wary of at first because it's not strictly power metal and not like this epic heavy metal that is on some of the other songs. But I think Jeff Stark did an incredible vocal on that song that really, really sells it. And the fact that it hits in the middle, it makes like a transition in the album, worked really to our favor. So it was very nice to be validated by people like, oh, this is cool. Like, this is not, like you were saying before, a thing that, why is this here? Or we don't want this here. It's like,
yeah, if I can add, of course, I love the song that you mentioned, but we like this epic aspect of it. And we may need to work more on that. I think this is something that many people in the band like and embrace, and we probably need to exploit that creativity that we have in that angle as well, as much as we can in the future works. And some of the things that we are working on now, which is still kind of secret, of course, may have some of those elements clearly present. But from the rest of the songs, I think I would say Misbegotten Dream, the second single, and several reasons. I think it captures both the German elements, especially during the solo part where I essentially play the classic kind of German patterns, and the solo in section is very much soaring, beautiful and melodic, really goes into my heart. But also it has a very classical, old school 80s heavy metal bass on the verse and also in some of the main riffs, right? That ten. Not very useful, not very used. Kind of, you don't really get that in most of the German power metal bands, or you don't really get that in the contemporary power metal at all. We're going back to the 80s there, and so I like that combination of, we are trying to again capture even more of these primitive, true heavy metal roots in that song than even in some of the other songs, though still combining them with the more kind of 90s elements. And then the vocals are really beautifully delivered. I like the layering of Stark, how he merges these two different registers to create this very interesting and unique sound that I think we need to keep exploiting as well. The backing vocals in the choruses are super well panned. There is this a little bit of voice. If you listen to it carefully, it sounds like on headphones that you are actually talking to yourself. You hear yourself talking to it somewhere there. I asked Pontius to pan it a little bit wider so that you can really feel that it's kind of something in your head going on. There was a lot of thought went also into the lyrics. I came up with the idea of writing something about Elric, but what I wrote was kind of more in the Stormbringer thing that Domine would like essentially play. But Jeff took the idea much more lyrically, and Jeff Taft, and he elaborated this beautiful lyrical kind of arc when he talks about what Elric could be feeling about the death of Cimmeril at his hands. Kind of, that's the whole story of the song, if you didn't notice. So it also is it kind of goes very much into these classical epical roots. Everybody who likes classical heavy metal likes Elric of Melnibone and Michael Moorcock universe. We have that, but it's also in a different way. It's a little bit more poetic, and the musically, I think we have several interesting layers, and then production is also well thought of. So that's why I think that's the best song of the album.
talk about the lyrics. I don't have them with me, but judging by what I could pick up while listening to it, it's mostly epic, adventurous stories. So, what's your inspiration for the lyrics?
Yes. So I did the lyrics for Misbegotten Dream and for Puppeteer's Bane, both of which are about specific fantasy characters. One is, as Evgeny talked about, Elric from the Eternal Champion series and Michael Moorcock's universe. The other is from another fairly famous fantasy series called the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erickson, and it deals with the character Ganos Paran, who is this soldier who kind of loses faith in his empire and what he serves after he goes through a bunch of experiences. And the story is the tale of that very quickly. The book hanging out over there in paperback is one of the books in that series, because I just started rereading it when we were talking about lyrics, and Genny suggested, well, we should do a few more songs about specific literary things. It's a very heavy metal thing to do, and that's how those two came together. The others are kind of, we had a loose idea of journeys and heroism and the traveling through all these stories that we kind of went with the album, but since we have 4 different lyricists actually on this album, myself, Evgeny, mostly Jeff Stark, and also Cody, who wrote the lyrics to his 2 songs, we get kind of a wider picture.
Right. So I guess I cannot speak for Jeff Stark. I think Jeff, if I can only reflect a little bit on Jeff's, and he's unfortunately unavailable today for the call, is that he went into, I guess, his own world, and he exploits a lot of his own kind of thoughts and feelings, and he's reinterpreting the power metal in his mind. He's not really a guy who has used to play in power metal bands. I think this is the first time he's doing this genre. He used to play in several prog bands and also in a very famous Seattle-based grunge band, actually, called Malfunction, which is actually a classic, true, cool band there. So it's first time he's taken on this, if you wish, from this kind of epic angle, and I think he tries to strive for lyrics that will be simple and kind of singable and catchy, so he can also kind of create better melodies and arc with his voice, and I think it worked great. So lyrics are really serve a purpose to showcase his vocal abilities there. Cody, I guess he's got his own story, I guess, how he writes lyrics. I wish I could speak about that, but those are very well thought lyrics. Both of his songs are very well thought. He's got this Journey's End and Second Side. Essentially, there is no chorus. It's all a whole creative arc. So it's a lot of thought into those lyrics were put.
Second Sight is kind of a story of a prophet who sees the future and kind of can do nothing about it, and is sort of tormented by this knowledge of the future in a very Cassandra from Greek mythology sort of way. Whereas I guess Journey's End is exploring the thoughts of a guy before he might be executed or might go to his death, and it's kind of, Cody adds this very ambiguous element to it, which I think fits in like the whole mystical elements that kind of pervade the album. Oh, sorry.
No, that's perfect. And I mean, and I wrote lyrics for 2 songs, Siege of Arcona and part of the Warren song. Siege of Arcona is very obvious history based. I like this. There is this book by Penguin Editors that my father used to have called The Northern Crusades, which is a very interesting period in time in history where the Pope, the Catholic Pope, armed many knight orders, the famous crusaders who went to Jerusalem, but the same thing was happening in the north, but instead of going against the Muslims, it was going against the heathens. And there's these Northern Crusades led by the Teutonic Order and some other orders as well. Anyway, so Siege of Arcona is dealing with that period in history where Essentially was a northern crusade trying to go against the heathens in the north, and it's focused on a Slavic heathen town of Arkona, a real place in Germany. You can read about that if you do a Google search of Arkona.
So you already mentioned that, but in Oracle's Prophecy, the first single for the album, you have Lisa C. Martin, former Darkmoor, as a guest singer. How did she get to be on the album?
Exactly.
This is all you, Evgeny.
Right. So it literally I already give you the scoop, right? So I started. It was actually COVID. I have to say, COVID had very bad things for most people, but some of the few good things it had is that many people were forced to stay at home. And musicians, when they are at home, they are not idle, right? They just stay at home and just plan, like do pottery or something. They actually try to create music and talk online with friends. And I happened to have a lot of my time on my hands during the first month of COVID, March, April, because my company essentially sent us home and we were just doing nothing, almost nothing. And I hope nobody from my company sees this interview. And so essentially I was here in my basement, which is where I essentially study music, work, this kind of my creative place, on my drum kit, and I was kind of playing around with a cover of Blind Guardian to try to work on it with Tom and Mordred's song. And through internet, I started to talk with some folks. Tino Avia from Reveal was one of the guys who I was interacting a lot back then, and so he invited Elisa to sing on that cover. And the result has been published in some of these YouTube channels, and my channel included. And so that's how I end up meeting Elisa. And Elisa ended up being a very, very, she's a wonderful person, wonderful artist. And I had admired her since I was a child as well. I have their second album from Darkmoor there. I can show it now. And I used to actually drink beers in the club where that picture is taken, because that's the After Dark. That's the Madrid underground metal scene. And their bass player used to be essentially the guy behind the bar in that spot. And I used to get trashed there every Saturday. So it was very kind of home. And so we started chatting. And I said, you were going to be working on more covers together. We were working already on Blazing Stone with JP about as well. And I like, do you want to collaborate with us on our album? We are doing this thing. And she was, yeah. Like, yes. And so I was super excited to be able to invite her. I know she's essentially she's a legend in the field, I would say. And for us, it was a true honor, privilege. She is the most humble person I ever met in the musical scene. Extremely talented, super powerful. She really brought the song up to a level that is incredible. We didn't foresee it. Never imagined that your song, Jeff, would sound like that.
No. I was just going to say, talking about the differences in growing up. I got the Hall of the Olden Dreams around the same time like I was getting the power metal. That was early, like 2000s for me as well. And I remember being sad when Elisa left Darkmoor. So for me at 15 and 20 years later to see like, oh, now she's singing a song that my band wrote and it's on our band album that's as big a trip as coming down to see Evgeny practicing with Tom. Not something I ever would have expected, but like he said, it's incredible that I would not have imagined the song to sound like it did. And the duet, the way they structured it between the two of them is great.
Yeah.
The trade-offs.
Now I think, again, going back to the COVID thing, right? Musicians are even more collaborating. Like you've all seen, right? An explosion of online collaborations. Everybody's playing with everybody across the world, YouTube content, whatnot. And this is going to be happening probably more and more. So it's really thanks to the technology and thanks to also the time and the ability to interact. Now we can interact with pretty much anyone we want and ask them to do something with us. It's fantastic. So I think these collaborations will keep coming, and we may end up collaborating with someone else in the future releases. So need to use this opportunity because musicians are not idle; they want to do things.
When this interview goes online, the album will be already available on the channel for people to listen to. And so you have Adamantis, Sacred Outcry. Another band that I posted recently is Lightbringer of Sweden. These are some bands that posted recently on the channel that bring back the power that was lost from power metal with its modern and overly symphonic and bombastic pop chorus that you see nowadays. How do you see the state of power metal today and what you're trying to bring back?
I think obviously there's a place where people love the stuff that is now, and there are some really cool things done based off that even evolved from stuff that came from the same period. You've got kind of like that German branch, and you've got all the people who absorbed what Rhapsody was doing in that same time period, and that evolved the other end. But as you said, Lightbringer of Sweden is on Sacred Outcry. I think it had this run from probably the mid 90s up to maybe 2005, 2006, where there's just tons of albums from Germany and Sweden that have that kind of hard-hitting power metal style, like Dream Evil, Steel Attack, all these bands. And then it sort of shifted away from that to the stuff that incorporates the more symphonic element. And because it's been a quieter front, there is that sort of niche and that yearning to see that come back from the origins of all that stuff, away from having the orchestra and all this, and just kind of big vocals, big riffs, hooks, a lot of energy and speed. It's kind of the distillation, as Evgeny often says, of the core elements of power metal and the things that made people kind of fall in love with the genre in the first place, I think. And you get, when this happens too, you get people who are younger and didn't maybe hear, like, who are learning about Stradivarius long after Timo Tolkki has left, or Blind Guardian as a very different band now from the Blind Guardian that wrote Nightfall in Middle Earth. And that's kind of, you're introducing people to this, the origins of it, and the people who, like us, grew up with it are kind of going back to, like, oh, this is stuff I love, and it's good to see it happening. And that's kind of how I feel. Like there's this core element, this heart to it that is kind of got sidetracked, but is still there, and that will always evoke its own sort of special feeling.
Yeah, maybe it's oversaid, but it's when I think about when people say, "Oh, something," Bart Gabriel likes to say about that. I mean, Bart and Oli, they have this festival, Keep It True, right? You think about it from the outside. What do you mean, keep it true, or keep something true, right? They talk a little bit more about the origins of heavy metal, and they embrace that a little bit earlier stages of the genre. When I like to think about us, perhaps, is keeping the later stages of heavy metal, but still true to those as Jeff said, elements, right? Speed, power, epicness, without going into the, perhaps maybe driven by the mass consumption methods of distribution, perhaps driven by, I really don't know if it's driven by artistical exploration, because honestly there's not much artistic exploration in Sabaton, like that's my opinion. Or Powerwolf. The fact that Powerwolf charts #1 in Germany, that's probably the biggest success of that style of music, as opposed to artistic innovation, my honest opinion. We are not doing that. We are trying to go back to that and try to recreate that feeling. That's because we think it is actually the true elements that we live by, and we breathe those elements. And so it's glad that you mentioned us in companion, for example, with Sacred Outcry, a band that I was blown away since you posted on your channel. Absolutely fantastic, phenomenal performance by Yanni. The songs are so well played, so much. The production is excellent. So I'm really flattened that you even compare us in a way, in the same kind of, put us in the same kind of category in a way. And I like, as you say, that trueness, and many fans feel that. And you've had like about 180 comments on your channel about how people feel excited about that. So there is a need probably for that as well. People are sick of this power metal that is just, ABBA songs, and there has to be a little bit more power in power metal again. So let's bring power again to power metal.
I think those two bands are a really good example because they have singers like Yanis, who's now mostly famous from Beast in Black, and Herbie is in Lightbringer, who is mostly famous from singing. Granted, he was in Simbreed, but was singing. People know him as in Avantasia. These very like dramatically different bands, and then they're just like, they have great voices for this stuff. When they just go back and like sing over this punchy, very energetic riff, or like this big epic thing, and it sounds great.
I've listened to Adamantis before, and I've listened to your album, and we're going to publish it on the channel. But many people still haven't listened to you. If I didn't know about Adamantis before, how would you convince me to listen to your band?
All right, Jeff, do you want to do the honors?
No. This time I'm throwing you to the wolves. This time.
Right. Well, I think it's a very honest. Heavy power metal album. If you like fast, well played, executed, but kind of staying true to the elements that power metal was about in the 90s, without too much flourishing, without too much choruses, without symphonic elements, pure riff, fast drums. If you are into that stuff, you will like us. If you feel a need for that elements in the bands that are kind of lacking, you will find that. So that's what I would say. I would also say that it's we have a good number of creative minds in the band, so it's a band that probably will keep creating and evolving, and still keeping probably this true core at its heart. So, but you can expect a lot of from this band. I think we are set to grow. We are set to become bigger.
I'd say like the same pretty much to people who know that sound, like the early 90s, 2000s kind of vocal and riff and high energy power metal. So if we ended up drawing, people love it when you name bands, stuff like Gamma Ray, but also stuff like Nocturnal Rites, if you like dig a little deeper. But also, as Evgeny said, we try to inject a bit of our other, so something that's very diverse, because we have in that kind of this era of like the epic heavy metal. There's a lot of little doom snippets that we try to sneak in because we're all fans of that, and then so it's sort of a something for everyone, like a power metal with a side dish of like classic heavy metal.
Yeah, we like our classic heavy metal as much as you can see, right? So we really drive from the sources as much as we can as well. So again, trying to stay a little bit true to the core, as you mentioned before. That's for me the most important thing.
Let's talk about serious stuff now, because you are releasing an album in a moment that's not so good for the music industry. So how worried are you about everything, especially with not being able to play concerts in the foreseeable future?
I certainly miss concerts, and back when Jeff Stark joined the band, we had some things lined up, and we were excited to play the songs and see like how people reacted to them live, and maybe get that initial impact. And that obviously didn't happen. And then the vocal recording got delayed a couple months because of COVID, because it would have been irresponsible for us to do so otherwise. And then, so I guess I'm very worried, and I certainly miss concerts, and I would like to be able to play this and see people react to it in the moment, because that is part of the feeling. and that is where we started. Like making music with an exchange of ideas over the internet is very efficient and like a great way of doing it. We're all people with lives, but we misses kind of the energy of us playing it live, or the energy of us, the five of us, just being in a room and messing around with the arrangements and feeling like, hey, what if we do this here? What if we try this? Yeah. So it changes things from the way we liked doing it, because we arranged all the songs as a group. We were like, maybe we should try something here, maybe we'll change.
So thinking about the future, right? I mean, we are small here. I would like to be bigger and bigger, right? And the traditional way to be bigger is to go on tour, right? Tour here, tour there, go do festivals, get more people to know about you, go reaching out further and further. We cannot do any of those things now. And so what we would like to do, we will have to rely heavily on the internet. So that's again, we are so grateful for your support here, because we know that thanks to people like you, we have that possibility to reach beyond the traditional media that we have, beyond our media. So again, I think nowadays this kind of medium is even more important for musicians than ever before. So things like what you do to support bands like us, it's of uttermost importance. I cannot thank you enough, Anderson. And then for the future, we will have to see when the opportunity arrives. We will try our best to be invited to some festivals. There are interesting festivals, of course, happening in the US and somewhere else. And whenever that is a thing, we will hope to be on the list where will be enough people to actually say, well, I want this band to be here as well. I want Adamantis to play on this or that festival. And I would think that would give us that extra push that we'll definitely need. But in the meantime, it's all going to be media. It's all going to be content. We will keep working on the internet as much as we can. Maybe some streaming shows from here. But I also have to say, I'm a scientist. I know how many vaccines are already underway. Think will not last forever. There is light at the end of the tunnel. The problem is that many people, like for example here, are stupid enough to reject some of those vaccines. There is a lot of this anti-vaccine movement, the anti-mask movement, and all that movement, honestly, is going to be a problem. And scientists, scientific community are worried about that. That even if we have a solution, people will be forcing themselves to avoid the solution because they think it's all a hoax. So, but hopefully that eventually, maybe in some more civilized places like Europe, things will go back to normal. There will be a solution to this problem. Music will go back. Some venues will closing now. They will reopen. People will be put out of business now. They will go back to jobs because people demand art. One of the things about human nature is that we are not satisfied with just eating, sleeping, and shitting. And that's the very thing that defines us as a human being. We need that extra emotion, and music is the primary medium that we are essentially we are used to create emotions and to experiment emotions. We have music, we have TV, movies. I mean, we have also books. But so this is going to be part of us, of our culture and civilization. So we as a musician, we need to keep, weathering the storm as much as we can, transmitting and connecting with our fans and people through channels like yours, and then waiting for the opportunity to go back on stage, because there will be an opportunity sooner or later.
We were kind of thinking that the end of the year would already bring like some concerts, and maybe the shows, the festivals would go on the beginning of next year, like April, May. But now it doesn't seem like it, because things here are going back to the way that they were before, like in March, April. Instead of being open, they are being closed again. Like they are putting like some lockdowns and some rules. They are more strict. So this is why I'm feeling like a bit down right now at the moment.
Yeah, I know, but we got to be patient. We got to be patient. This thing has killed so many people already, and it has put some countries at the brink of collapse. Spain, for example, had to have people essentially, they had to improvise morgues on the streets when the first wave hit, right? They had people piling up on plazas, on Corrida de Toro plazas, like on essentially on stadiums. They were actually filling stadiums with corpses. Like, think about it. So this thing is serious. We managed to do that because we as a community, as scientists and healthcare providers and essentially politicians understood how to balance the thing so that we could still keep in the curve a little bit under control. That was the whole thing about the first wave. So now we're living through that second stage where the curves are climbing up, but we are keeping them under control so that we don't have this immense collapse of the hospital system. Let's keep doing that. We have many more treatments. We understand how people are resilient, and we need to be patient. Science advances at a great pace. There are many vaccines already in clinical trials, clinical trials of second phase. Very soon there will be treatments, and then we will probably start to get out of this hole. But yeah, I think it's a little bit longer than everybody anticipated, I guess. But let's be patient.
It's disappointing for me to see people not take it seriously, but if people do continue seriously and do follow guidelines, and as Evgeny said, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. People just need to hold fast, stay the course, and take it seriously. It's disappointing that it's not.
But it is true. I have to say, for my friends in the music and stuff, it is true that it's really killing lots of jobs. Yeah. And for bands, we are happily not living off our art. For bands who have already went into the stage of living only exclusively of their art, given the circumstances, they are not really earning anything because most of the income, as you know, comes from the live acts, from the live events, and all that is. So many people in the industry are suffering, and of course the people who live from those events are suffering. And we just want to transmit our biggest empathy and condolences. It's a huge thing. This is the biggest industry impacted by COVID. Of course, it is a huge thing in our community. But I'm hoping that some places there are some countries that actually are conscious about that, and there's policy making activities aimed at that. Some not as good at that, such as specific state-based support for musicians or for most impacted communities due to this stressful situation. And countries should be looking more after that. They should be looking after their musicians. There was a huge movement in Europe recently because of that. The whole community was asking for more measures to protect and to help sustain this vital spectrum of human society, which is the performing arts. And countries should do much more to protect their artists than they are doing right now. So that's for sure. It's a big problem, and there needs to be much more effective action from the state and from the government to keep these people essentially afloat, so they can go back and put a sparkle in their eyes, as our singer says, once we are allowed.
I have one last question. When we are recording this, the album is not even out yet, so it's too early to talk about future plans. But what are your expectations with the album? What do you think it's going to bring to Adamantis? And how do you see yourself 1 year from now as a band?
If you ask me how I saw us last year to now, that'd be easy. But I think we did this album the way we did it. We were releasing it by ourselves, working on it by ourselves, promoting it through your channel and other similar sources to show what we were capable of on our own and kind of make our statement. We wanted to get our music out there the way as ourselves, essentially. We were going to release this. This is as a show of who we are as a band and musicians. And from there, now that there is the curtain is up and people can see what Adamantis is and who we are, we can go forward from there, and people who like that can hopefully come along with us. We are, I speak definitely for myself, definitely for Evgeny, and pretty much all of it. We're not people who kind of are idle people. We are always thinking about, we always want to think about the future and always looking over the next horizon to what we're going to do. So we're hoping this sort of generates the buzz and attention that will let us proceed forward at a higher level with what we're doing. And hopefully we're going to continue on this path and also explore it in a few different ways. We definitely plan to release something a little while after this, so at least a smaller thing and then a slightly larger but slightly smaller thing.
Yeah, we're actually working on music. That's, if you want to know, we're working on new music. We're working on new material,
Yes.
and we will work on that, and as well as promoting this and building this from the ground. As Jeff said, this was a huge exponential curve for us. We were essentially nothing, and now more and more people know about us, and the feedback is in general very, very good. So we think that we are on the path of growth, and we need to keep exploiting that. Hopefully, we can get someone to help us reach out even further. It's kind of hard to do all these on your own when you also have like day jobs and stuff.
Yeah.
So kids, and so we would hope to get someone to trust in us and say, well, this is a band that actually I think is something that will bring. They will keep working hard. They will keep delivering and developing this style that people seem to be liking. And so that's what we would like to achieve with this album. Maybe after some time, after it runs for a while, I would like to see who will be interested in essentially helping us to get to the next stage from a record company standpoint of view. And we do definitely have something in our works already. We're working on actually someone who will collaborate on us with us. It's all secret, of course. We cannot say anything, but it's going to be a very special collaboration. And we are working actively on those new songs. We have a plan for that, but again, depending on who and how will help us, all that will definitely
change. Now, especially because we've worked on this for so long, and the path from the very beginning of this album to its release has been such a long one. We are also eager to take what we learned from it, like as songwriters and musicians, and just from the whole experience, and go forward. I'm really excited to have Stark and at the ground level contributing, because to me he brought so much to the album, so it'll be great to write the songs coming up.
Next album will be much better. if people like this album, next album will be the same but way better, because we know each other much more, and we will have much more security, and then our own kind of we'll have more confidence in ourselves than we probably had before, and so that will definitely push us, and we already are seeing that in our ideas, what we are exchanging between ourselves. So the future will be the future is bright.
So Evgeny is just basically telling you to not to buy this album, buy just the next one.
I was thinking that. It's like, wait a couple years till they pick. No, they'll definitely buy this one so that the next one can exist.
Exactly. Your support now means that you're investing in the future.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Okay. We talked with Evgeny and Jeff from Adamantis. It was nice talking to you guys about the album. If you want to listen to Flung Realm, you can do it on the channel. The link is on the description. You can listen to the full album, and then after that, there are the links so you can buy it. So this is it. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much, Anderson.
Thank you, Anderson. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, thank you for all you do from your channel.
Yes.
For all the community. I think you are a beacon in the dark for many of us.
There is a lot of music that I would not have heard in the last 2 years, and maybe not more, if not for your channel. So to be among that, and to maybe have someone have that experience with us it's great. Yeah. And again, we owe you a lot, just even not as a band, but as people who are fans of this music.
Yep. Exactly.
Thank you so much. Thank you.